Welcome back to the Habits and Humor podcast. I'm Susie B, and today we are talking about something kind of unique. We're going to talk about how we kind of work through some different difficult things in our lives. And there's an amazing way that we can do this. And Deena Goldstein, welcome to the show, Deena.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Deena has written a book that fascinates me. I just think it's so interesting how you have been able to take something that so many of us experience in a negative way and put it in sort of a positive light and give us a little bit of hope and guidance on how to get through this. So kind of talk to us a little bit about what your book is and how you got to where you are with all of this, and how you're able to use humor to lighten these difficult times.
Well, so the book was really like, I guess, an accident. I didn't set out to write a book. It's called Okay, Little Bird. And basically, it's the story of this bigger than life father who was, this dresser and a cowboy, and he was funny and he was unfiltered a lot of times, especially like in Costco. But anyway, that's in another chapter. But he was this really interesting character, and he and I just got along so great. We were just like best friends. And the story takes you through the relationship through, voicemails and family dinners and anecdotes and all these things. And then Little Bird finds out that her father's health is declining and, of course, terminal. And what she does with that experience changes how she goes through it. She is me. It's a memoir. I think you and I spoke earlier where we don't always have choices about what's handed to us in life, but we do have choices about how we handle it. I'm all about the happy. And, sometimes we're not experiencing happy at the moment, but I always say, and people have heard me speak before, there's always joy to be found in darkness. There just is. You have to find it. You have to work a little bit. But my father and I had this amazing humor between us. And so that is how I navigated his health decline and his eventual passing. And that's what I did. And it's been a saving grace for me, honestly. I get these incoming one-liners all the time. There's a chapter for that too.
Incoming one-liners. I love it. So yeah, that had to have been shocking, like to just find out this amazing relationship that you have. And then, well, what do I do now? What was your thoughts at the very beginning? Like when you very first found out his diagnosis, kind of what transpired at that point?
Well, I mean, I know I'm one in a million people who have had this happen where they find out somebody that is special to them has a short time left. And so I want to back it up because my father had several serious terminal diagnoses that he beat. I always wanted to get him a superhero cape because I couldn't believe what he had withstood. But one day I was sitting at the house, my mom wasn't home, and he gets a call with results from one of his tests that it's bad, like 6 weeks left bad. Now, I know in the short few minutes we've been on here, I'm a talker. And so I was like that with my dad. I was never quiet. But at that moment, Susie, I was like speechless. I didn't know what to say. And we're sitting there quietly by ourselves in the house. I put my hand on his back and I said, "It'll be okay, Dad." And he turned and looked at me. He's like, Deena, it's not going to be okay. You can't say that because it's not. If you want to say you're here for me, I understand whatever you need. That's different. And it's true. And I had this aha moment where we say it's okay, but it's not for the other person. It's for us. We're trying to make ourselves feel better because it doesn't feel okay. So how did I navigate that? I literally just like a train, I just went straight through it. I just dealt with it. I was in front of him. I saw him. I saw his decline. I would bring him lunch when he couldn't go out with his buddies anymore. I'd bring him sandwiches. And then and what's interesting is it was so sad that he couldn't go out, but then I had these amazing lunches with him, just he and I at home, unwrapping a sub, right? These amazing moments that were captured as something that could have been really distasteful. So you find ways to capture what you can at the moments that you're provided. And that's what I did. And, toward the end of his life, he was in this group home, which, by the way, was during COVID. I was only allowed in a few times, wasn't allowed, and there's another story there later, but before it shut down, I come up there and, he wasn't very animated, as you can imagine. And he says to me, and my dad was hilarious, by the way. He says, "I got an idea." And I thought, okay, Dad's back. What? He's like, "This is what I want you to do. by the way, as soon as he tells you, this is what I want you to do, you're taking notes because you're not going to get it wrong. I want you to go out. I want you to get both of us steno pads, not a notebook. It's got to flip over like a secretary from 1954. Okay. And you're going to come back and we're going to each have a book and we're going to each write what happens to us funny that day. I thought,
I love it.
you know what? How cool, right? We're going to now, and because I'd go see him every day before the nursing home shut down. So I go back, I come back like a little 5-year-old, here are the notebooks. I got the notebooks, right? And so he's like, okay. So I come back a couple days later and he goes, okay. And he flips his pad and he's recounting, Susie, what would have been like really upsetting to somebody, like a loss of dignity, somebody helping him to the restroom. He's like, I got a lady sponge bathing me. She looks like she needs help. Like, why are you helping me? It looks like maybe I need to help you. And it's funny, but here he is making humor out of this situation, which I know he feels very humiliated. He was such a proud man. He goes, okay, how about you? I had nothing. I go, oh, Dad, I'm sorry. I go, you know what? I forgot, nothing funny happened this week. Not quite true. I could not find humor in my heart because I knew my dad was dying. It was the first time in my life I couldn't laugh. And ironically, I ended up with a book, which I guess is the tail end of that, right? I did write something funny, but I still have the blank pad, and it just really, again, these moments that were captured. So yeah, that's
amazing. Oh my goodness. I love everything about it. And I like that you're saying that, you know, even in the hard times, there's joy to be found, but you have to find it. Like you were just saying, like during that time, you didn't have funny things to write down. But then I would guess that once you started writing them, they became more prevalent. They were easy to remember more and more and more. And then you would experience funny things throughout the day. And even now you probably have things that remind you of his sense of humor, that make you laugh. And
all day.
yeah,
All day,
exactly.
every
So you
day.
know he's there. And I think the more often we pay attention to what we want, you know, he wanted to laugh. He wanted to enjoy this comic relationship with you and to have the humor shared between the two of you. And that was his way of trying to produce that. And I really truly think that by just writing down a couple of things a day, we really can turn anything into what it is that we're looking for.
You really can. It's so true. I mean, look, even if you're a person that doesn't journal, we all have thoughts. Just, jot it down. I mean, did I know that when I was 4 years old and I showed up in front of my dad with terribly scuffed shoes, that was going to be a source of humor and joy for me later on? No, I just wanted to, I got dressed up and I had to go back and forth till my shoes were shining like the top of the Chrysler building. There's a chapter in that. And he was really persnickety. And so, you have these moments that if you start allowing yourself to go back, there's all kinds of treasures, all kinds of stuff. We're not looking at it at the moment it's happening like that, but believe me, that's kind of how they end up. And you're right. I mean, he pops into my head all the time. There's a chapter in there called Incoming One-Liners. And I always like to tell the story. It's the first time I had to go to the cemetery, which, let's face it, it's not as fun as going to Target, not even close. And, I was so sad. I was by myself. There's a lot of stigma around the cemetery. What do you do? What do you say? Whatever. And in the Jewish religion, you don't get a formalized stone till after a year. It's just a tradition. So he had a little card. And I walked up and all I could hear is his voice going, oh, this is nice. So I finally made it to 85 and all they could do is give me this lousy card. And I started laughing. I was laughing out loud and I looked up and I was just like, thanks, Dad. Because that is, and another time I was like, I think everyone's got flowers for the loved ones. Look how nice that is. Maybe I'll bring flowers. And what do I hear? By the way, my dad was a horseback rider. Okay. And I told you he was unfiltered. So I'm thinking, I'm going to bring my dad flowers. And here comes an incoming one-liner. Do me a favor, no flowers. I'd rather have my horse poop next to where I'm at. I mean, this is that was his humor. But that's it walked me through all my grief. I mean, I wrote through his decline, his passing, and, and through COVID.
A lot of people think that there's like this toxic positivity concept out there where by using humor when you're in a grief-stricken situation, you're not facing the reality of it, or you're trying to hide behind the humor instead of dealing with the problem. Did you ever experience that, or what are your thoughts on that?
I get that. That's sort of like, hey, everything's great, everything's great. That's like a fault. That's just not real. This is truly allowing yourself to feel. Is deep as I felt grief, I could conversely feel joy, because if you're feeling the grief, it's because you felt the love. A lot of the times, when I'm being interviewed, I tell the story that my sister and I had this moment where we were holding vigil for my dad in hospice in his last few days, and we were starving. And I pack an artillery of snacks wherever I go. And my sister and I looked at each other like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. We had been there for a long time. So we didn't want to be disrespectful to my father. So we went in the closet and we ate Cheetos, which, let me tell you, loud, yeah, and messy. And we started laughing because we thought, God, if he could hear this, he'd be like, what the hell is going on in there? I'm trying to die. That's my father's humor. And we started laughing, but it was a release of tension, of stress, of profound sadness, of impending loss. And it was a great connection my sister and I had. It's a moment that I'll never forget. But these are those moments. That's a different kind than this false sense of I'm good. Everyone always, you'll hear people, start their day out. How you doing? Oh, it's all good, which is a blanket statement. You know what? It might not be good, and that's okay. That's kind of a different story. So to come full circle, the book is Okay, Little Bird, and there's a section in there on how the title came about. But I told you the story, how he told me things are not always okay. They learn to be a different okay. And that's what that is. It's taking joy and humor to make it different. It's not that we don't miss them, but you move forward. That's just what you do.
That's spot on. Taking joy and humor and just making the grief and the difficult things different. And
you make it different.
You can still face the problem. You can absolutely be in the middle of it and still, and you don't have to be miserable there. It's okay to be in the difficult situations and not be miserable.
Yeah. And I think it's important to give yourself permission. I mean, think about stress from work. We walk around, we're all pent up. Now think about the stress of dealing with losing somebody close to you. I mean, it's just overwhelming. You don't even know the half of it till you're on the other side of it. And so you need to release that's it's physical and emotional. Stress affects our muscles and our heart rate and all these other things physiologically. And it's important. And there's nothing wrong with letting go a little bit. And you can be sad, and you might have a moment where you're sharing a story, about the person that this is going on with. So I think it's really healthy. And I think it's healthy for coping with any challenges in life. I mean, hey, I just got fired from a job. Oh my God, that's the 4th time. Ooh, I might be in the Guinness, you know what I mean? What are you going to do? You have a choice. You can either wallow or you can use it constructively.
Yeah, that's right. I use an analogy of a waiting room sometimes. And, if you're in a waiting room and you look around at the different people in there, everyone's doing the same thing. They're all waiting. But some people are angry and fidgeted and checking their watches, and they're really frustrated. And other people are reading a book or relaxing or just chilling in the situation. And it doesn't matter. Like, how you choose to respond does not affect the outcome. You're not going to get in that room any faster if you're checking your watch every 3 seconds and knocking on the door.
Right. I love that analogy. I mean, it's the very definition of being mindful. It's like, have you ever been in traffic and there's somebody that's just buzzing by you, and all they want to do is get in front of you, and guess what? They end up in this right next to you in the parking. Like, wow, you got to the grocery 40 seconds faster. I bet, you're going to, wow. How
Look at all the time you
now.
save.
Like, where does that get you in life? You just have to be in the moment. It's okay to be in the moment, whatever it is. And I'm a firm believer of facing things head on, because at some point it's going to come around, and it affects how you interact with others. And maybe when you have another loss and you didn't deal with the first one, when you're losing somebody, I mean, there's a whole language, I learned from hospice. I'll never forget this. My dad was a really private guy. And so, I would see him every single day. So he was at the house, and hospice comes over, and boy, you want to talk about talking direct. I said, Mom, do you want me to leave? She's like, no, I'd like you to be here. It's okay. I said, Dad, do you want me to leave? He didn't care. He just was already mentally checking out because he knew what was happening to him. So the hospice nurse sits down. She's like a social worker, just a wonderful spirit. And she, plain as day, looks at my dad. I'm sitting across from my dad. I'll never forget this. Looks at my dad and says, so, you know, you're dying. I'm like, I was like, no, I am right now. If the
Oh
ground
my
could please
God.
open up and swallow me. But it's an example. It's just, it's out there. It's like the elephant in the room. Everybody knows what's happening, but it was the first time somebody said it in front of him, in front of me. So now he knows I know, even though he knew. But it was the most chilling moment I can ever remember, because I did not want to be there for that statement. I knew it was happening, and so did he. I don't think it just was weird. But you know what? Hospice job is to make you be real. Because in order to really be there for that person, you got to be real. You got to face the facts. So I just was like, I just sat there, and I tried to make myself invisible so he could have his moment, and whatever. But you got to deal with the discomfort.
You got to deal with the discomfort. And I like what you just said there, where sometimes you have to put the other person's needs above your own. And like, that is true. That is how you show up in a relationship that works. That's how you actually be a member of a loving relationship, is you're able to
Yes.
tell right now, this person needs whatever they need, and I'm going to make that happen for them.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes you got
Whether
to
it's
put
a
your own.
parent, child, friend, you're absolutely right. Yeah. In order to truly, my mother used to always say, my mom was a licensed therapist. She'd say, in order to truly empathize with somebody, you have to be in their shoes. And sometimes you have to go to the dark place with them. Somebody's feeling depressed or whatever. You don't spend time perking them up. You go, God, I'm sorry. I'll just sit here with you. That's what they need, not a cheering squad. What's worse than that? That's not right. You want to go where they're at so that you can be there for them. Then they feel okay. They feel accepted. They don't feel like they're under a microscope. That's true unconditional love. And that's what I had with my father. I mean, we would fill in spaces for each other. He rode horses for years. And when his first diagnosis with his heart, he had to give up his horse. I mean, I've never seen anybody so sad and depleted in their life. I knew that at some point before he passed away, I would provide a horse encounter for him. So I arranged for a miniature horse to come to my patio. My dad fed the horse carrots, and for that short moment, there was no illness, there was no death. It was my dad feeding a horse. It was amazing. It was
Wow.
amazing. In filling in spaces for somebody to help them feel good.
Wow, that's amazing. Good for you for doing that for him. What an amazing memory that now you get forever. That's amazing.
It was fun. It was also a little weird to see a horse in my backyard. I have a poodle who's 8 pounds. I was like, wow, this is really weird. I guess I said to my husband, you're on cleanup today. I normally get the poodle, but it's a horse. So, but anyway.
Oh, that's funny. So here's a question for you. A lot of people, when they're in a grief situation, like, if I know that someone's father is passing away, or someone else is in that situation, we have this fear, like we want to be there for somebody, but we're so scared we're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. How do we get past that? How do we not say the wrong thing and do the wrong thing?
That is such a great question. Everybody thinks that. It is so common. I even posed the same question to the hospice nurse. First, I learned that hearing is the last sense to go, so they can always hear you. So one thing is, you never want to talk about the person while they're in the room. They can hear. They can hear, but they may not be responsive, but they can hear. I think the best way to navigate that, and I'm not an expert, it's just how I went about it, is just being in the moment, finding out what they need. There were times I wanted my father to still feel like he had some control over his life. Car keys are gone. Next week, he can't leave the house. You know what I mean? Slowly, pieces of his life are being pulled away through no fault of his own, but a disease process. And so what you do is allow them control. So I'd come over and I'd have to borrow his, the garage door opener, the clicker. And he'd say, Deena, please return that. Okay, Dad, I want to let you know I put that there. Okay. Dignity, humility. He's still in charge. When I would go visit him in the group home, he loved vanilla milkshakes. So I would always show up with a milkshake, whether he had an appetite or not, even if it was for one sip. And you know how they put, for sanitary reasons, they leave the paper on the top of the straw? the people that don't grab it like a softball. Anyway, sidebar. And so I come up with the milkshake, and my dad is very weak, but he was still kind of moving his arms and stuff. And that piece of paper was on there. I was like, I brought you a milkshake. And he goes, ooh, and he got real excited. So I held the milkshake out. He could not get that paper off, but I did not go, here, let me do that for you. It's like dealing with somebody that's got physical limitations, that might be in a wheelchair or whatever. They don't always, they want to do it. Sometimes it feels good for them. It's a sense of independence. I didn't do anything till finally I saw that there had been quite a struggle. And I said, would you like me to grab that for you? And he goes, yeah, would you mind? And I did. And then every time thereafter, I took it off. But I allowed him the opportunity to try it himself before taking his choice away to try. So allow people choices. Don't try to control. You want to help.
That's really interesting you say that, because I do that too. Like when I see someone who's struggling to unload their groceries, immediately I just want to do it for them. And, oh, let me do that for you. That looks really difficult for you, but it's their independence. I need to ask it like you did. Hey, would you like help with that? And then they can say yes or no. That's
it gives them the option.
Really good advice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So then once I had a friend who he was one of my next door neighbors, and we were semi close. And he got this crazy out of the blue diagnosis, and he passed away within like a month.
Oh
and
my
it was
gosh,
just
I'm so
really,
sorry.
really, oh, thank you. It was just really, really shocking. And at that time, I felt paralyzed because I didn't know what to do. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do the wrong thing. I'm going to say the wrong thing. I haven't talked to this guy for a couple of weeks. Like, if I just show up now, am I going to be like, is it going to be weird for him or whatever? And my aunt, whose husband had passed away at a young age from cancer, I called her and I just said, hey, I know you've dealt with grief. Like, what do I do in this situation? And she said to me words that I will never forget. She said to me, doing the wrong thing is better than doing nothing. What are your thoughts on that?
I so agree with that. People get scared when something's uncomfortable. And chances are it's more uncomfortable for the person that's on the outside of the situation than the person dealing with it. The person dealing with it doesn't have choices. And so it's like saying everything will be okay. This is what we do to comfort ourselves. So you just go there to be with the person. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Is there anything you need? Are you craving anything? You want to watch a movie? Do you feel like reading? How are you feeling? Just how are you feeling today? Is it a good day? You check in with them. You just be real. The chapter, Okay, Little Bird, how the book got its name, I found out I was able to go visit my dad. He had a patio on the outside of his group home, and COVID was still going on, but I could go visit outside. So, I brought food and, of course, a milkshake again. And they told me to meet around the patio, that they were going to have me wave to him in his bed. My dad had no trunk strength. He couldn't even move. And they're like, Mark, your daughter's here. And now I hadn't seen my dad in a while. And my heart was like racing. I was so excited to see him. And there's all this shuffling around. She said, hold on, Deena, your dad wants to come see you. I'm thinking, oh my God, he can't even move. And he got help into this transport chair and got wheeled to the screen door. Wow. I was in so much pain for him, what he had to go through. And I was so overjoyed that he would do that. I know he did it for me. I know he did it. He wanted to have our normal, like, hey, how's it going? He started passing out from the exertion. And I knew I had a couple of minutes. It was like, how's everything? He could barely talk. And I'm sitting there and he looks up and he goes, okay, little bird. That was it. I was just like, I knew it spoke volumes in that moment. And at that time, what can I say to him? I said, I am so happy to see you. I'm so happy to be with you. I love you so much. And I miss seeing you every day. I just told him how I felt at that exact moment. It's how I feel every day. But you just say what you feel. And I said it. And he said, okay, little bird. He never called me that in his life. He called me a lot of other things, but never that. And when I left, I didn't know what that was going to be, but I knew that was going to be life-changing. And it was on so many levels. It's that moment. Because I had the very same thought, Susie, when I went to see, what am I going to say? I've got like 2 minutes because he has no stamina. I'm just going to tell him how I feel. And that's one thing I did through our entire life. There was never a second he didn't know how I felt about him. I love you. I'd call him up. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Fine. This was my dad. What are you doing? Nothing. Same thing I was doing yesterday. I just talked to you on the phone, Deena. I'm still breathing. Is there anything else? Nope. And I'd keep calling back, as he'd put it, I keep coming back like a bad cold. But this is what we did. He loved it. And then when I didn't call, he'd be like, hey, how come you didn't call? I'm like, oh. So,
I love this back and forth banter between the two of you.
oh yeah.
Do you
Oh
have
yeah.
like I know we usually do a funny or embarrassing story to kind of, wrap up how we're dealing with the situation or whatever. We've talked a lot about, some different ways that we can deal with grief and those habits and things that we can put into our lives. Do you have a funny story or something like that, an embarrassing story to share with us that can help us just to remember to how to deal with these difficult situations?
Yeah, I do. I have it. It's from a chapter called Closed Caption, and that's spelled CLOTHES, like clothing. So you know where I'm headed. So my father, when his health started declining, got very thin. Now, he was obsessed with clothes. It didn't matter if he was walking to the refrigerator, he needed to look good. It was very important. And so that sets the stage. He also, while he was still at home before he went to the group home, it was important to him that he look good in case visitors stopped by. Okay. So he said, Deena, I'm always cold because he wasn't well. I need a jacket. The jacket's got to have this kind of waistband. I don't want this kind of fabric. It needs to sit here on my shoulders. I mean, there was a litany of descriptors that I'm like, okay. All right. So now I go all over and I go back and forth. How's this? No. This one? No. This one? No. And finally he's like, Deena, do me a favor and don't do me any favors. That's a direct quote. He's like, please, you're bringing me, I don't know where you're getting this stuff. I'm not wearing it. I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I'm on a personal mission here. So finally I get this jacket that I think is going to be a winner. So I strut it in there. I go, Dad, I got the jacket. He goes, bring it over. Let me see. And I'm like holding my breath while he's like inspecting it and everything. And he's like, okay, not bad. So I go over like a day later and he goes, Deena, where'd you get that jacket? I'm like, why? He said, Deena, where's the jacket from? I said, Ross. Why? Deena, where in Ross is it from? I said, why does it matter? What department did you get it from? Women's department. Why? Women's department? Okay, because the zipper is on the wrong side. I guess with guys, it's like, I don't know, it's stitched it differently. I'm like, does it matter? Is it warm? Deena, where in the women's department did you get it? I said, I got it in the little girls section, but what does it matter? It fits. He's like, oh, that's nice. So now I'm wearing little girl size clothes. No, thank you. Take the jacket. So like a week later, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This is kind of a nice jacket. I'm real petite. I'm like 5 foot, I'm going to keep it. It's a nice jacket. Got a great deal on it. He says to me, is that my jacket you're wearing? I said, yeah, it's nice and it fit and it was $10. He goes, oh, that's nice. I feel much better. We're wearing the same size now. And, it's one of these situations where, he's so diminished and he's so proud about his clothes, yet we were able to have this banter and that was his full personality. I mean, that was him. And we were just doing our thing. And it was
perfect example.
Bittersweet good. Yeah.
This is a perfect example of, dealing with, clearly the two of you wanted two different things to happen here and it wasn't working out and you could have been angry in the situation, but instead you just made it humorous and it connected you instead of dividing you. Yeah. I love that.
Thank you. It's a lot of people say like, God, he could be really snarky. How did you not get offended? It's not about me. He's just being him. And I accepted him for that. So he just was so funny. I'm just like, really? You don't like the jacket? I won't wear it to your house. I go, you know what? Actually, maybe I will. You'll see what you missed. I still have that jacket and I love it because it reminds me of that exchange.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
That's the kind of stuff that's in the book. It's like bouncy, funny, you laugh, you cry, but I hope readers are, find a lot of inspiration in there.
Awesome. Well, we all want to read it now. So where do we find it? Where do we get your book, Deena?
So you can go to oklittlebird.com. It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, and it's also independent booksellers across the country. And I'm on Facebook. People can look up, they can go to deenasart.com, DEENA, deenasart.com. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today, Deena. I think this has been such a good conversation because this is such a difficult topic. And there's so many of us that either have experienced grief or we know someone who is. And sometimes we just don't know how to say the right thing, do the right thing. And I think you've given us such great options today on how to make this, a consistent part of our lives, because grief is a consistent part of our lives. So let's be real here. We're all going to deal with this multiple times
Yeah.
over. So to know how to do it, give people their options, and to put them and understand what their needs are and put those first. Just great, great advice. Thank you so much, Deena.
Oh,
I
thank you
love,
so much. Thanks for having me. It was great talking with you, and it's nice to share, and it's important. It is a universal topic. You're totally right.
yeah. And I love the book. I love the title. I love that I know why it's titled that now. Thank you for sharing that. Such a dear
Thank
story. I
you.
can't wait to go and read it. Anyway,
Yay.
thank you for being here today, and for your brilliance on helping us deal with the difficult stuff with the joy and the humor still involved.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in for another week. Again, if you are working on things like this in your life and you want a little bit more, a little guidance, a little bit of one-to-one, remember, you can always go to susiebhabits.com and sign up for the one-to-one personal coaching there, personal training, whether those be physical habits, health habits, mental habits, or whatever have you. If you just need a little bit of accountability on what you're working on, head there. Thanks, you guys, for coming to Habits and Humor, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us this week on the Habits and Humor podcast, where you come to learn about health and habits and then take action. If you're ready to take action and turn simple habits into massive results that last a lifetime, or you'd like to join our free live call with incredible guests every Tuesday, message me at Susie B Habits. That's SUZIB Habits on your favorite social media platform, and we'll get you in here. Or you can join our free Habits and Humor Facebook group for additional free resources. I'm Susie B, and this is Habits and Humor. Come to laugh, stay to learn, choose to live.